Hello guys, Yulia Baun over here. We're going to continue with chapter 6. In this video, we're going to learn again how to calculate consumer price index and how to calculate inflation based on the consumer price index. Also, this learning activity or this example is going to help us to understand one of the problems with the CPI. Remember, we talk about it that consumer price index as well as GDP, or gross domestic product, or GDP deflator, it's not a perfect measure of what it is trying to show us. For example, GDP is not a perfect measure of society economics well-being, but it is the best measure that is out there. The same with the consumer price index. Remember, consumer price index is showing us how the cost of typical consumer is changing over time. It is not the best measure, or it is not a perfect measure that is out there, but it is the best one that we have. So in this example, we have a very simple economy. In our very simple economy, we're going to consume two goods. We're going to consume beef and chicken. And remember, consumer basket is fixed. It's given to us that consumer is going to buy 10 pounds of beef, 20 pounds of chicken, and we have these prices over the course of 3 years. What we need to do over here, we need to calculate consumer price index for year 2015, and also we need to calculate inflation rate between year 2015 and 16. Guys, pay attention over here that base year basket cost already was calculated for us. So it's $120, it's already given to us. So what are we going to do? We're going to calculate consumer price index for year 2015. So I'm usually first, all the time when I need to calculate something, I usually write down the formula first with the variables. Don't go ahead and put the numbers right away. First, go ahead and write down the formula. So CPI for year 2015. What do we need to know for that? We need to take basket cost. I'm just going to put basket for year 2015. Remember, this is our current year, and divided by the basket cost for our base year, and I'm going to put base year kind of so that you remember. And remember, to calculate the index, we need to multiply it by 100. So this is our formula. Now we're looking at this formula and we need to figure out what kind of information we're missing. And remember, the base year, it was given to us with the, yes, it actually says over here that base year is going to be year 2014, and already the basket cost calculated for us for year 2014. So therefore, we already know the basket cost for our base year. What we need to do, we need to take basket cost for year 2015 and calculate it. For year 2015 and calculate it. So we're going to take our prices that are given to us in the table. Remember guys, quantities of the basket is fixed. So BLS, they choose a base year, they choose year 2014 as a base year, they fix the quantities, and this is what we're going to use in our calculations. So for price of beef in year 2015 was $5. The quantity of beef was 10 pounds that typical consumer purchased. And then we have a second product that is chicken. The price of chicken was also $5. And the quantity of chicken that typical consumer purchased was 20 pounds. Multiply by 20. If you're going to calculate all that, it's going to be, I believe, $150. $150, and this is our basket cost for year 2015. Basket cost. I usually write it basket, but you understand this is basket cost. After we calculate basket cost for year 2015, what do we need to do? We need to plug it into this formula and calculate our consumer price index for year 2015. So we have basket cost for year 2015. We just calculated it. It's $150. Basket cost of the base year, I'm going to remind you once again, they already calculated it for us, so we don't have to do it. It was given to us. It is $120 multiplied by 100, and if we're going to calculate it, I believe consumer price index is going to be 125. Guys, remember, consumer price index does not have any units attached to it. We don't have percentage, we don't have dollar sign, it's an index. Remember, it's a kind of like indicator. Okay, so there's no units attached to it. And remember, what does it mean? Consumer price index shows us the price level in the economy if to compare with the base year. Remember, in the base year, it's our benchmark. In the base year, CPI is all the time going to be equals to 100 for the base year. So for year 2014, CPI is going to be equal to 100, and this is a kind of our benchmark. This is our beginning point. If consumer price index in year 2015 increased, it's right now at 125 points. What does it tell us about the economy? It tells us that the level of prices in the economy has actually increased for year 2015. And remember, consumer price index shows us how the cost of living of typical consumer is increasing over time. So it means that for the typical consumer, the cost of living has increased, and in order to maintain the same lifestyle as consumer had in year 2014, consumer in 2015 needs to have more money in their pockets. So we calculated consumer price index for year 2015. Next, what we need to do, we need to calculate, this is shown to us, the same answers, $150 for the basket cost, 125 our index. Next, what we need to do is to calculate our inflation rate between year 15 and 16. I'm going to start with the formula again. Inflation rate between 15 and 16. Guys, remember, this is a kind of like year 1, this is year 2, is going to be CPI for year 16 minus CPI for year 15 and divided by CPI for year 2015 and multiply by 100. Multiply by 100. So this is the formula. Now we're going to look at the formula and we're going to see what variables we're missing. Remember, in the previous PowerPoint slide, we calculated CPI for year 2015. We already know that number, but we don't know CPI for year 2016. So this is what we need to calculate. I'm going to take another step over here and write down the formula. CPI for year 2016. Remember, we take basket cost. I'm just going to put basket for current year. Current year is 2016 because this is the year that we want to find the CPI for, and divided by the basket cost of the base year. Again, I'm not putting 2014 over here. I usually like to write it that this is a base year, and we need to multiply it by 100. Looking at this formula, what kind of variables are missing? Remember, we know basket cost for year 2014, that's our base year. It was given to us in the previous, kind of at the beginning, it was given to us. Do we know the basket cost for year 2016? No, we don't. This is what we need to find. I'm going to take another step over here, and we're going to calculate basket cost for year 2016. So our quantities are given to us, our prices are in the table. We just need to calculate the cost. The price of beef, remember, very simple example, very simple economy, so it's easy for us to calculate and analyze. So the price of beef is $9. We bought 20 pounds of beef, or typical consumer bought, 10 pounds of beef in that year. So we have 10 pounds, so that's my 10. And then price of chicken is $6 per pound, and typical consumer purchased 20 pounds of chicken. Multiply by 20. If we're going to calculate this, then our basket cost is going to be I'm sorry, $210. I apologize. It's going to be $210. That's going to be our basket cost. So after we calculate this basket cost, what are we going to do? We're going to take this number and we're going to plug it into a formula to calculate our CPI for year 2016. So I'm going to continue over here. Basket cost for year 2016 is going to be $210. Basket cost for the base year, we already know that it was $120. Multiply by 100. If we put all those numbers in the calculator, the index is going to be $175. I'm sorry, the index is going to be 175. Remember, there's no units attached to it. So once again, what is that index shows us? It shows us that, or it tells us that the prices in year 2016 has actually increased, isn't it? If to compare with the base year, that year was 2014. Remember, in the base year, consumer price index is all the time 100. If we're going to compare prices for year 2016 with the base year, we can tell that for typical consumer, the price level in the economy for goods and services that they're buying has actually increased. What are we going to do with that index? Remember, our bottom line, what do we need to do? We need to find inflation rate between these 2 years. So we're going to plug in the numbers and figure out what was the inflation rate. CPI for year 2016, we just found it was 175. CPI for year 2015, remember, we found it in the previous PowerPoint, or in the previous kind of calculation. So it was 125. We already calculated that number. Remember, we need to divide by 125 and multiply by 100. If we're going to calculate it, then inflation rate is going to be exactly equal to 40%. So inflation rate between year 2015 and 2016 was exactly 40%. So guys, I want you to keep all these, and I hope like you were really doing and writing down calculation together with me. So I want you to keep all these numbers in mind, and we're going to move to learning activity 2, but we're going to use these numbers and these kind of, conclusions or, answers in order to do the learning activity 2. So we know inflation rate, we know the basket cost, for this year. Now what we're going to do, we're going to analyze this table together a little bit. So just kind of don't pay attention to these numbers yet. Okay, okay, I'm sorry, I apologize. So these are the numbers that we just calculated. So these are the numbers that just calculated. So the inflation rate is 40% and the CPI was 175 and the basket cost is 110. So learning activity 2. What do they want us to do in here? They want us to pay attention to this table. And guys, I want you to also pay attention here to this table and just think about you as a typical consumer. What kind of behavior are you going to have if the prices for beef and chicken over the course of these 3 years change this way? Just think about it. Pay attention. The price of beef over the course of 3 years, do you see how it's actually increased? It's more than double. So in 14, the price was of beef for 1 pound was $4, then was an increase into 5, and in 2016 the price of beef is actually $9. Look what happened with the price of chicken. It was $4, it was 5, but in year 2016 the price of chicken did not increase as much as the price of beef. Just think about you as a typical consumer. If you see that the price of beef is increasing that much, are you still going to buy the same amount of beef? You in real life, are you still going to buy the same amount of beef? And the answer is no. You as a typical consumer, you're going to go to the store and you're going to say, well, you know what? The price of chicken increased by a little bit, but the price of beef increased by a lot. I'm not going to buy as much beef. I'm going to buy more chicken. So once again, this is what you're going to do in real life. Bureau of Labor Statistics, they still going to report consumer price index as if you were buying these quantities. But in real life, you as a consumer, you're going to buy different quantities. And they're giving us here an example that in year 2016, households, they actually bought 5 pounds of beef, but 25 pounds of chicken. And what do they want us to do? They want us to recalculate the basket cost for year 2016, and they also want us to recalculate the inflation rate between year 2015 and 16. And we're going to compare those numbers, and then we're going to make a conclusion. So once again, typical consumer, you as a typical consumer, you're not going to purchase this many pounds of beef because the price of beef has increased a lot if you compare with the price of chicken. What are you going to do? You're going to buy actually less units of beef, more chicken, but the BLS is going still to calculate and report CPI as if you were buying these fixed quantities. So let's go ahead and do that. For the next slide, we're going to calculate or recalculate our basket cost for year 2016, and we taking into consideration these quantities. This is what typical consumer in real life going to buy. So remember, we are working with year 2016. I'm working still with these prices, but with the new quantities. The price of beef was $9. We purchased 5 pounds of beef now in real life. The price of chicken was $6, and we purchased 25 pounds of chicken in real life. If we're going to recalculate this basket cost, I believe that this is going to be $195. $195. So guys, do you remember how much was the basket cost when we calculated that before? Does anybody remember that? I think it was like at about 210. So what I want you to understand that once again, in real life, you as a consumer, you are actually spending less money on your basket, but BLS still think that you are spending $210 on your basket in year 2016 because they again using these fixed quantities. This is a kind of the entire thing that you want to understand here. So, and next one, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and recalculate our inflation rate based on this new basket. So over here, what do we need to do? We need to calculate, so the basket cost is $195, and then we're going to recalculate the inflation rate. So that was the previous inflation rate. Now we're going to calculate inflation rate for year 2016. Remember, we're taking CPI 16 minus CPI for year 2015 divided CPI for year 15. Guys, I really hope that you're writing this down with me. I probably should have encouraged you at the beginning of this video to take notes with me so you remember it better when you write down with me. So looking at this formula, what are we missing? What kind of information are we missing? We don't know consumer price index for year 2016. We're going to go ahead and find it. CPI for 16, remember it's going to be a new number because the basket cost for 16 is different. CPI for 16 equals basket 16 divided by basket over base year multiplied by 100. So our basket cost is $195 now. Base year basket, remember it was given to us, is still going to be at $120 multiplied by 100. And if you're going to look at this consumer price index, then it's going to be 162.5. And now we plug this number to calculate our inflation rate. We have 162.5 subtract 125. This is CPI for year 2015. Remember, guys, we already calculated that earlier in our learning activity 1. That one didn't change. So, and we need to divide it by 125 multiplied by 100. And if you calculate in that, then inflation rate is going to be 30%. Inflation rate is going to be 30%. So one more time, a kind of, what did we do over here? We said that typical consumer in reality going to buy different quantities of beef and chicken because beef increase in price by a lot, chicken increase in price only by a little bit. What we did, we recalculate the basket cost with the new quantities. This is what typical consumer is going to buy in reality. We said that the basket cost was actually cheaper. It was $195. This is what typical consumer in reality spends on goods and services. And then we used that basket cost, recalculated consumer price index, and recalculated the inflation rate. Remember, when BLS reports consumer price index and using fixed quantities for year 2016, then inflation rate was actually 40%. But if we recalculate it with the quantities that typical consumer uses in reality, then inflation rate is only 30%. So this is one of the problems with the CPI, and I want you to understand that because consumer basket is fixed, CPI is usually that BLS reporting is going to be overstated, because when the price of goods and services increasing over time, consumers are going to substitute to a cheaper good. So we're buying more chicken right now, it's cheaper. We call it substitution buyers. And therefore, BLS still using fixed quantities and telling us that, well, the cost of typical consumer increased by 40%, but in reality, the cost of typical consumer increased only by 30%. So guys, in the next video, we're going to start talking about the problems of CPI. There are 3 of them, but this particular example was leading us to one of the problem of the CPI. So this is how they calculated the inflation rate. Pay attention, they use the prices, not the indexes, but that's not what I want you to do. And then we're going to talk in the next video about the substitution bias and the other problems with the CPI.